symbol of grace and tradition, but behind its carefully crafted public image lies a web of secrets. Prince Andrew, once beloved by the public, had been dragged into one of the most infamous scandals in modern royal history. But what no one expected was for two women, Virginia Giuffre, a former maid, and Princess Beatrice, two figures from entirely different worlds, would break their silence. The revelations they shared would not only shock the world, but also change the fate of Prince Andrew forever. This is the untold story of the secrets they uncovered, the truth they revealed, and the shocking aftermath that no one saw coming. Virginia Giuffre's breakthrough moment. For years, Virginia Giuffre had been living in the shadows of a horrific truth, a truth that haunted her every waking moment. After suffering years of abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein, she had become one of the key figures in the investigation that linked Prince Andrew to the scandal that would ultimately rock the royal family. But despite the mounting evidence and the accusations, Virginia had stayed silent, preferring to avoid the public eye. Her own trauma and the constant media attention had kept her from fully revealing the extent of her pain. However, with the release of new court documents and mounting pressure to bring the truth to light, Virginia made the decision to finally break her silence. Her voice was calm but steady as she sat in front of the camera, prepared to recount the details of the days that had changed her life forever. It wasn't just about the abuse, it was about the system that protected these men, she began, her eyes locked on the interviewer. It was about the way they used their power to control, to manipulate, and to silence me and so many others. These were words she had never thought she would say aloud, but now they felt like a release. Virginia recounted the moments leading up to her first meeting with Prince Andrew, describing how she was told it would be just another routine introduction. What she didn't know was that the meeting would turn into something far darker. "I didn't even know who he was," she admitted, her voice soft but firm. "I didn't understand what kind of power he had, but he was there, with Epstein, and that's all that mattered." The details she shared were chilling. She described how Prince Andrew had used his royal status to manipulate her into a compromising situation. "I wasn't just another victim of Epstein's. I was a pawn in a much bigger game," Virginia confessed, as the audience around the world was left in shock. As Virginia's words echoed across the globe, the media frenzy grew. This wasn't just another tabloid story, it was the raw truth of a woman who had suffered in silence for too long. But her revelation wasn't just about seeking justice for herself, it was about exposing the institutions that allowed this abuse to thrive. Virginia's bravery in speaking out gave a voice to the victims who had been silenced for far too long. With her words, she not only set the record straight, but also ignited a firestorm of questions about Prince Andrew's role in the scandal. What had been whispered about in private for years was now being shouted from every corner of the globe. The world, which had once viewed Prince Andrew as a royal figure with a bright future, now saw him in a completely different light. His carefully cultivated public image had been shattered by Virginia's testimony, and the once proud prince was now facing the kind of public scrutiny he had never experienced before. Virginia's decision to speak out would become a pivotal moment in the royal family's history, a moment that would forever alter the monarchy's reputation and the fate of Prince Andrew. Princess Beatrice's struggle with loyalty and truth. As the storm surrounding her father intensified, Princess Beatrice found herself caught in the crossfire. She had spent years distancing herself from the public eye, keeping her personal life out of the tabloids and trying to shield her family from the media's relentless scrutiny. But as the scandal exploded, Beatrice knew that her silence would no longer suffice. She had been living with a truth she could no longer ignore, and the pressure to protect her father was taking a toll on her mental health. Beatrice had always been close to her father, and the love she had for him was undeniable. She had watched him face personal struggles, yet had always believed in his innocence, even as the whispers about his connection to Epstein grew louder. But now, with Virginia Giuffre's accusations and the mounting evidence against Prince Andrew, Beatrice could no longer stand by and pretend that everything was fine. "I've lived with this pain for a long time," she confessed in a tearful interview, "but I can't stay silent anymore. I can't protect a lie." In her interview, Beatrice revealed that she had known about her father's relationship with Epstein long before the scandal hit the headlines. "There were things I heard, things I knew, that I could never bring myself to speak about," Beatrice admitted, her voice cracking under the weight of her words. "I thought I could protect my family, protect the image we had spent so long building, but I was wrong. I was only enabling the pain and the lies to continue." This was not the confession the public had expected. Beatrice had spent years maintaining the royal facade, but now she was ready to shatter it. Her emotional admission sent shockwaves through the media as the world tried to reconcile this new version of Princess Beatrice with the image they had once held of her. She had always been the dutiful daughter, the poised princess. But now, she was a woman coming to terms with a truth that had been hidden for far too long. The royal family had always prided itself on its ability to maintain a perfect public image, but Beatrice's words tore that illusion apart. "I can't stand by and let this happen. My father is not the man you think he is," she declared. But even as Beatrice made the decision to confront the world with the painful truth, the weight of her words lingered in the air. Her decision to speak out marked a turning point, not only for her family, but for the monarchy as a whole. Could the royal family ever recover from the scandal that had now engulfed it? And more importantly, could Beatrice ever repair the relationship with her father, knowing what she now knew? The royal family's secret web of power. The revelations from both Virginia Giuffre and Princess Beatrice had laid bare the extent of the royal family's involvement in a scandal that had plagued the world for years. But as the details of their stories unraveled, another, even darker truth began to emerge. The role of the royal family in shielding Prince Andrew from the full consequences of his actions. It wasn't just about protecting one man. It was about protecting an entire institution. In the months following the confessions, investigations into the royal family's connections to Jeffrey Epstein began to gain traction. Documents that had been sealed for decades were suddenly brought into the public eye, revealing the depth of Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein. The media began to report on secret meetings and undisclosed financial transactions that had occurred between the prince and Epstein, with the royal family working behind the scenes to maintain a facade of normalcy. What was once seen as a collection of unsubstantiated rumors now had the weight of concrete evidence behind it. One particularly damning report uncovered emails and phone records showing that Prince Andrew had been in frequent contact with Epstein even after the convicted sex offender had been arrested. But even more chilling were the reports that revealed how members of the royal family had been involved in attempts to silence those who had come forward with allegations against Andrew. The conspiracy to cover up the scandal went far beyond Prince Andrew. It involved powerful figures within the palace who had worked tirelessly to protect the reputation of the monarchy at all costs. As the world came to terms with these revelations, the question of accountability loomed larger than ever. The monarchy, which had long been seen as an unassailable institution, was now facing an existential crisis. Could the royal family survive the damage that had been done to its reputation? Could it continue to be a symbol of unity and tradition, or had it become too entangled in its own web of lies and deceit? Beatrice, who had once been proud to be a member of the royal family, now found herself questioning everything she had ever known. The more she learned about her father's actions, and the actions of those who had protected him, the more disillusioned she became. "It wasn't just my father," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "It was the entire system that allowed this to happen, and it's time for it to change." Prince Andrew's desperate attempts to regain control. As the media storm raged on, Prince Andrew found himself at the center of a crisis that threatened not only his career, but his very freedom. The once celebrated prince had been reduced to a pariah, with his name now synonymous with scandal and disgrace. Desperate to regain control of the situation, he turned to his advisors and legal team for damage control. The plan was clear: deny everything, fight back with legal force, and hope that the storm would eventually pass. But as the weeks went by, it became increasingly clear that Prince Andrew's strategy wasn't working. Public opinion had turned irrevocably against him. Every interview he gave, every public statement he made, seemed to make things worse. His defense against Virginia Giuffre's accusations, in which he claimed he had no recollection of meeting her, was met with widespread skepticism. People wanted answers, and the more he refused to provide them, Prince Andrew's defense was weak. His lawyers vehemently denied all the allegations, but their arguments were quickly dismantled by the relentless pace of the case. The public's fascination with the scandal only grew as new revelations came to light. The pressure on Prince Andrew intensified with every legal maneuver, and soon it became clear that the royal family's silence was no longer enough to protect him. It wasn't just about Prince Andrew anymore. It was about the future of the monarchy, and the royal family had to make a decision: stand by their son or distance themselves to protect the institution. Meanwhile, Princess Beatrice, who had already been thrust into the spotlight, found herself increasingly embroiled in the scandal's fallout. As the legal battle gained momentum, Beatrice's role as a member of the royal family became even more complicated. She was now faced with the reality that she could no longer hide from the truth. The time had come for her to speak out once again, this time not just for herself, but for the future of the monarchy. Her statement to the press was heartfelt and emotional. "The truth is painful, and it's something that none of us should have to face," Beatrice said, her voice trembling. "But it's time for my father to face the consequences of his actions. This isn't just about one man. It's about the trust that was broken, and it's about the family that is now fractured because of it." With those words, Beatrice confirmed what many had suspected. She could no longer protect her father, and the royal family could no longer protect the institution. Prince Andrew's last stand. As the legal battle drew closer to its final chapters, Prince Andrew found himself facing a moment of reckoning. The pressure from the media, the courts, and his own family had reached a boiling point. point. The once proud prince, who had enjoyed a lavish lifestyle and royal privileges, was now forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He had lost the public's trust, and with the court case heating up, he was running out of options. Desperate, Prince Andrew made a last-ditch attempt to salvage his reputation by publicly distancing himself from Epstein's inner circle and denying any wrongdoing. In a high-profile interview, Prince Andrew claimed that he had never participated in Epstein's criminal activities, and he tried to paint himself as a victim of circumstance. "I was just a friend of Jeffrey Epstein," he insisted, "and I deeply regret ever knowing him." But the more he spoke, the more his words rang hollow. His defense seemed rehearsed, and it did little to quell the growing storm. Instead of offering the public the truth they so desperately wanted, Prince Andrew's words only deepened the suspicion that he had more to hide. Behind the scenes, his advisors and legal team were scrambling to find a way out. A last-minute settlement offer was made to Virginia Giuffre, a desperate attempt to avoid further legal battles and keep the scandal out of the courtroom. The royal family, who had once hoped the scandal would blow over, now found themselves watching as their worst fears came to life. Prince Andrew's last stand was not one of strength, but of desperation, and it was becoming increasingly clear that his future was no longer in his hands. The royal family's image, carefully cultivated for centuries, was now in tatters. No longer could they rely on their position to protect them. The monarchy, once seen as an untouchable institution, was now in the fight of its life. The very foundations of the British royal family were being shaken, and there was no telling whether they could ever recover. The nation waited, holding its breath, to see what would happen next. The end of the road for Prince Andrew. As the legal proceedings continued, and the royal family became embroiled in scandal, Prince Andrew's fate seemed all but sealed. His reputation, once bright and promising, had been tarnished beyond repair. The monarchy, which had long prided itself on its untouchable image, now faced a decision that no one had ever expected. The institution that had stood for centuries was now under siege, and the future of the royal family was uncertain. In a final shocking move, Prince Andrew stepped away from public life, officially resigning from all royal duties and retreating from the public eye. The decision came after a long period of pressure from both the public and his family. While his resignation was seen as an attempt to save face, it was also a tacit acknowledgement that the royal family could no longer protect him from the fallout of his actions. Princess Beatrice, who had once hoped that the truth would never come to light, now found herself in a position of responsibility. She was no longer just a member of the royal family, she was the future of the monarchy. The events of the past few months had irrevocably changed her, and as the media continued to scrutinize every move she made, Beatrice knew that she had to lead her family through this difficult time. It was no longer about loyalty, it was about doing what was right. The royal family had endured scandals before, but this one was different. The truth had come to light, and it had changed everything. As the world moved on, the legacy of Prince Andrew, and the monarchy as a whole, would never be the same. The British royal family will never be the same after the shocking revelations from Virginia Giuffre and Princess Beatrice. What was once an untouchable institution has been irrevocably changed. The monarchy, which stood tall for centuries, now faces its greatest crisis yet. With Prince Andrew's resignation and the public's trust in the family shattered, what does the future hold for the royal family? Will Prince Andrew ever be held accountable for his actions? Can the monarchy survive this scandal, or is this the beginning of the end? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on this ongoing saga.